The alarm bells echoed through the metal corridors of station. Omega 7 as hundreds of cadets rushed toward the simulation chambers. Tommy Fletcher wiped his sweaty palms on his uniform and tried to calm his racing heart. Today was assessment day at the Galactic Defense Academy, and every cadet knew what that meant. The combat simulations would separate the warriors from the weaklings. The survivors from the casualties. Tommy watched his fellow cadets preparing for their trials. Gorak, a massive Krell warrior, flexed his natural armor plating while checking his plasma rifle. The thick gray scales covering his body could deflect most energy weapons, giving him a huge advantage in any firefight. Nearby, a group of Vorthan cadets seemed to flicker in and out of visibility as they tested their species' natural cloaking abilities. Their pale blue skin shimmed like water whenever they activated their camouflage, making them nearly impossible to spot. The Nixari cadets stood in perfect formation, their large black eyes closed in concentration as they practiced their telepathic coordination. Tommy had seen them work together before during training exercises. They could share thoughts instantly across great distances, allowing them to execute complex battle plans without speaking a single word. No human could compete with that kind of mental connection. Tommy looked down at his own hands. They were just normal human hands attached to normal human arms on a normal human body. No armor plating, no natural weapons, no special abilities that evolution had gifted to other species. He was average height, average build, with brown hair and brown eyes that millions of other humans shared. The only thing that made him different from any random person back on Earth was 2 years of military training and a stubborn refusal to quit. Instructor Vex, a towering insectoid with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles to get everyone's attention. His voice buzzed through the translation device attached to his throat as he addressed the assembled cadets. "Today you face the Survival Protocol Omega," Vex announced. "This simulation has been used for over 300 years to test military candidates from across the galaxy. The failure rate currently stands at 89%. Most of you will not last 15 minutes." A nervous murmur spread through the crowd. Tommy had heard the horror stories about Survival Protocol Omega. Cadets emerged from the simulation chambers shaking and traumatized, if they emerged at all. Some had to be carried out on medical stretchers after suffering complete psychological breakdowns. The simulation was designed to push every cadet beyond their breaking point, to find the absolute limits of their courage and capability under extreme stress. "The scenario is simple," Vex continued. "You will be placed on a hostile alien world designated as Planet Designation 847 Delta. The environment is actively trying to kill you. The native life forms are aggressive and numerous. Your equipment is limited to standard issue gear. Your mission is to survive for exactly 1 hour and reach the designated extraction point. Those who succeed will advance to the next level of training. Those who fail will be transferred to support roles." Tommy knew what that meant. Support roles were for washouts, the cadets who couldn't handle real military service. They would spend their careers filing paperwork and maintaining equipment while the real soldiers fought to protect the galaxy. He had not come this far just to end up behind a desk. The cadets were called forward one by one. Tommy watched through the observation windows as his classmates entered the simulation chambers. Most lasted only minutes before the emergency extraction protocols activated, pulling them out of the virtual environment as their vital signs reached dangerous levels. A few managed to survive longer, but none had completed the full hour successfully. Gorak emerged from his simulation covered in synthetic blood and breathing heavily. His natural armor had deep gouges carved into it, and one of his arms hung useless at his side. He had lasted 37 minutes, longer than most, but still far short of the required hour. The Krell warrior looked defeated as medical technicians helped him to the recovery area. The Vorthan cadets fared slightly better, using their cloaking abilities to avoid direct confrontation with the simulation's threats. But their natural camouflage consumed enormous amounts of energy, and they could not maintain it indefinitely. Eventually, they were forced into the open where the hostile environment overwhelmed them. Even the telepathic Nexari struggled with the simulation. Their mental coordination meant nothing when they were alone in a virtual world designed to isolate and terrorize individual participants. Without their teammates to share thoughts with, they were just as vulnerable as any other species. Fletcher, Tommy, human, second year, report to Chamber 7. Tommy's stomach dropped as his name echoed through the preparation area. He gathered his standard issue equipment pack and walked toward the indicated chamber. The gear was basic. Military surplus, a plasma rifle with 3 energy cells, a combat knife, emergency rations for 2 days, a water purification tablet, and a basic medical kit. It was the same equipment every cadet received. Regardless of species or natural abilities, the simulation chamber looked like a medical scanner crossed with a prison cell. A single chair sat in the center of the small room, surrounded by dozens of neural interface cables and monitoring devices. Tommy settled into the chair and tried to relax as technicians attached sensors to his head and chest. The neural interface felt cold against his skin as it established a connection with his brain. "Beginning neural mapping," announced the lead technician. "Subject is responding normally to interface protocols. Vital signs are within acceptable ranges. Simulation environment loading." The world around Tommy began to dissolve as the chamber's systems took control of his senses. The metal walls faded away, replaced by the sight of an alien landscape under a red sky. Strange plants with sharp thorns covered the ground, and the air smelled of sulfur and decay. In the distance, he could hear the roars and cries of unknown creatures. Tommy tried to access his equipment menu to check his gear, but nothing happened. He attempted to call up the simulation's exit protocols, but the commands did not respond. A cold feeling of dread settled in his stomach as he realized something was very wrong. The simulation had begun, but Tommy was completely cut off from the outside world. He was trapped in a virtual environment designed to break the strongest warriors in the galaxy, with no way to escape and no help coming.
Red warning lights flashed across every computer screen in the simulation control room as Senior Technician Walsh frantically typed commands into her workstation.
The quantum processors that powered the Academy's training systems were showing error messages she had never seen before in 15 years of service. Critical system failures cascaded through the network like a digital avalanche, each new alert making the situation worse. "I need a status report immediately," demanded Commander Thane as he stormed into the control room. The massive Krell warrior had to duck through the doorway, his natural armor scraping against the metal frame. Battle scars covered his gray hide from decades of real combat, and his yellow eyes burned with barely controlled fury. "Sir, we have a complete neural interface lockout in Chamber 7, Walsh reported, her voice tight with stress. "Cadet Fletcher's connection to the simulation cannot be terminated through normal protocols. The system is not responding to emergency shutdown commands." Dr. Nyla, the Academy's chief medical officer, glided into the room on her 4 spindly legs. The Vorthan scientist's pale blue skin had taken on a darker shade that indicated extreme concern. Her species had developed advanced neural technology over thousands of years, making her the foremost expert on brain-computer interfaces in this sector of the galaxy. "What are his vital signs showing?" Nyla asked as she connected her portable scanner to the monitoring station. "Elevated heart rate and adrenaline levels, but still within survivable ranges," Walsh replied. "Neural activity is off the charts, though. His brain is processing information at nearly double normal human capacity." Commander Thane studied the readouts with growing alarm. He had survived countless battles against the galaxy's most dangerous enemies, but this was a type of warfare he did not understand. In physical combat, you could see your enemy and fight back with weapons and tactics. Here, the enemy was invisible code and quantum mathematics that could kill a cadet without anyone being able to stop it. "Can we perform a manual extraction?" Thane asked. "Absolutely not," Nyla said firmly. "Forcing a disconnection while his neural patterns are this active would cause permanent brain damage or death. The simulation has somehow integrated itself completely with his consciousness. As far as his mind is concerned, that virtual world is completely real. Inside the simulation, Tommy crouched behind a cluster of razor-sharp crystal formations as something massive crashed through the alien forest nearby. The creature's roar shook the ground beneath his feet and sent flocks of flying predators into the blood-red sky. His plasma rifle showed a full charge, but Tommy had already learned that his weapons were nearly useless in this environment. The first lesson had come when he encountered a pack of six-legged hunters that looked like crosses between wolves and armored tanks. Tommy had fired his plasma rifle directly at the largest one, hitting its center mass with enough energy to vaporize a normal creature. Instead, the beast had absorbed the blast and become even more aggressive. The entire pack had chased him for over an hour before he managed to lose them in a maze of acid pools. His combat knife had shattered against the hide of a smaller creature that should have been vulnerable to physical weapons. The blade, made from military-grade composite materials, had snapped like glass when he tried to defend himself. Even his emergency rations had proven dangerous when several bites attracted swarms of tiny flying creatures that tried to burrow under his skin. Tommy checked his chronometer and felt his heart sink. Only 80 minutes had passed since the simulation began, but he felt like he had been fighting for survival for hours. The virtual world seemed to respond to his every action by becoming more dangerous and hostile. When he found shelter, the environment would shift to destroy his hiding place. When he tried to avoid the native creatures, they would hunt him more aggressively. In the control room, the technicians watched in amazement as the simulation's threat parameters continued to escalate beyond any previously recorded levels. The artificial intelligence running the program was supposed to maintain challenge levels within safe training ranges, but something had gone wrong with its core programming. The AI is adapting faster than normal, Walsh observed. It's learning from Fletcher's responses and adjusting the difficulty in real time. The threat level has exceeded maximum safe parameters by over 300%. That should be impossible, Nyla said. The simulation has built-in safety protocols to prevent exactly this kind of escalation. Commander Thane studied the tactical displays showing Tommy's progress through the virtual environment. The human cadet was moving differently than other species would in similar situations. Where a Krell warrior would charge directly at threats, or a Vorthan would use stealth to avoid detection, Tommy seemed to be trying something else entirely. He's not fighting, Thane realized. Look at his movement patterns. He's avoiding direct confrontation with every major threat, but he's not running away either. What is he doing? Dr. Neela enhanced the neural activity monitors and frowned at what she saw. His brain patterns are unlike anything I've recorded from other species during combat simulations. Most subjects show heightened activity in areas associated with fear, aggression, and survival instincts. Fletcher is showing increased activity in regions linked to pattern recognition, environmental awareness, and problem-solving. Tommy's equipment pack was now completely useless. His remaining energy cells had drained mysteriously, leaving his rifle as nothing more than an expensive club. His water purification tablets had dissolved when exposed to the planet's atmosphere, and his medical kit had been destroyed when acid rain fell from the toxic clouds above. But something strange was happening. As Tommy stopped trying to fight the environment and started trying to understand it, he began to notice patterns. The acid rain fell in predictable cycles based on wind patterns and atmospheric pressure. The flying predators hunted according to specific schedules tied to the planet's unusual day-night cycle. Even the most aggressive ground creatures followed territorial behaviors that could be predicted and avoided. The massive creature that had been stalking him was actually following scent trails left by smaller prey animals. By avoiding those trails and moving through areas marked by predator scents, Tommy found he could travel without attracting unwanted attention. The realization came slowly, but it was profound. This wasn't a combat scenario at all. It was an ecosystem, and like any ecosystem, it followed natural rules. Outside the simulation, alarms continued to sound as the system's errors multiplied. But something else was happening that none of the technicians could explain. Despite the escalating threat levels and equipment failures, Tommy's vital signs were actually beginning to stabilize. His heart rate was dropping back toward normal ranges, and his neural activity was shifting from panic responses to focused concentration. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Nyla whispered as she watched the readings. "He's not just surviving. He's adapting to the environment faster than the AI can escalate the threats." The morning light of the alien sun cast strange shadows across the crystalline landscape as Tommy crouched behind a cluster of mineral formations. His breathing had finally returned to normal after hours of panic and desperate survival attempts. The shift in his thinking had come gradually, triggered by a simple observation that changed everything about his approach to the hostile environment. Tommy watched a small bird-like creature with metallic feathers land near a pool of what appeared to be acid. Instead of avoiding the dangerous liquid, the creature dipped its beak into the pool and drank deeply. The acid that had burned through Tommy's equipment was apparently safe for this species to consume. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. He had been thinking about this world all wrong. Every element he had labeled as dangerous or hostile was simply part of a complex system that he did not understand. The acid pools were not traps designed to kill intruders. They were natural water sources for creatures that had evolved to process different chemicals than humans. The razor-sharp crystals were not obstacles to avoid, but shelters that provided protection from the planet's intense solar radiation. Tommy began moving through the landscape with new eyes, looking for patterns instead of threats. He noticed that the aggressive six-legged hunters always avoided certain areas marked by specific scent trails. Following those trails led him to discover that other predators had already claimed those territories. The hunters were not randomly violent. They were following territorial boundaries established through generations of natural selection. In the Academy's control room, Dr. Nila leaned closer to her monitoring equipment as she detected dramatic changes in Tommy's neural activity. The human's brain patterns had shifted from the fight-or-flight responses, typical of survival situations, to something completely different. His cognitive processes now resembled those of a scientist conducting field research rather than a soldier fighting for his life. "His stress hormones have dropped by 70%, Nyla reported to Commander Thane. "Neural activity in combat-related brain regions has decreased, while areas associated with pattern recognition and environmental analysis are showing unprecedented activity levels." Commander Thane studied the tactical displays showing Tommy's movement through the virtual environment. The human cadet's behavior made no sense from a military perspective. Instead of seeking weapons or defensive positions, Tommy was studying plant life and observing animal behavior patterns with the patience of a field biologist. "Is he still aware this is a combat assessment?" Thane asked. "His actions suggest he believes he is conducting some kind of scientific expedition." Senior Technician Walsh pulled up the simulation's threat response algorithms and discovered something remarkable. The AI system was having difficulty interpreting Tommy's non-aggressive behavior. The program had been designed to escalate dangers in response to hostile actions from test subjects, but Tommy was not displaying any hostile behavior at all. Tommy found a grove of tall plants with broad, flat leaves that created natural shelter from both the acid rain and the scorching heat of the alien sun. As he settled into this protected space, he noticed small burrowing creatures emerging from the soil around the plant roots. The animals and plants had formed a partnership where the creatures provided nutrients through their waste while the plants offered protection and food sources in return. The discovery fascinated Tommy because it reminded him of similar relationships he had studied in Earth's ecosystems. Every stable environment required these kinds of cooperative partnerships to function properly. He began to wonder if he could find a way to benefit from existing relationships rather than trying to dominate or destroy them. His breakthrough came when he encountered the pack of six-legged hunters that had nearly killed him during his first hour in the simulation. This time, instead of running or preparing to fight, Tommy observed their behavior carefully. The creatures were working together to herd smaller prey animals toward a specific location where other predators waited in ambush. It was sophisticated, cooperative hunting behavior. Tommy positioned himself along the hunting route and waited patiently. When the prey animals fled past his location, he moved with them instead of against them, becoming part of their natural escape pattern. The hunters completely ignored him because he was behaving neither like prey nor predator, but like a neutral element of the ecosystem that posed no threat to their hunting strategy. The success of this approach encouraged Tommy to experiment further. He learned to read the subtle signals that different species use to communicate territorial boundaries and social hierarchies. By respecting these invisible rules, he could move through areas that would have been deadly if he had tried to force his way through with weapons and aggression. Dr. Nihilus scanners detected changes in the simulation's fundamental parameters as the AI began adapting to Tommy's peaceful approach. "This is extraordinary," she announced. "The artificial intelligence is actually reducing threat levels in areas where Fletcher has established non-aggressive interactions with the virtual environment." "That should not be possible," Commander Thane replied. "The simulation is programmed to maintain constant pressure on test subjects. Reducing threat levels contradicts the basic purpose of combat training." "The AI is learning from him," Walsh explained. "Its adaptive algorithms are designed to respond to subject behavior and modify the environment accordingly. Fletcher is teaching the system that cooperation can be more effective than aggression for achieving survival objectives." Tommy spent the next several hours mapping the relationships between different species and environmental factors. He discovered which plants were safe to eat and which ones attracted dangerous predators. He learned that certain mineral deposits could mask his scent from hunters, while others would attract beneficial creatures that could help him navigate the terrain safely. The most important moment came when Tommy found a family of small herbivorous creatures trapped in a dried riverbed where predators could easily corner them. His first instinct was to avoid the situation and protect himself, but something made him reconsider. Using techniques he had learned from studying the ecosystem, Tommy redirected a nearby stream to fill the riverbed with fresh water. The trapped creatures escaped by swimming to safety, and the waiting predators lost interest when their prey became mobile again. But the most remarkable result was that the herbivores seemed to understand what Tommy had done for them. From that moment forward, they actively helped him navigate the alien landscape, warning him of approaching dangers and leading him to sources of food and clean water. In the control room, monitoring alarms that had been sounding for hours suddenly fell silent. The simulation's threat parameters had stabilized at levels far below their starting point, and Tommy's vital signs indicated he was not merely surviving but actually thriving in the virtual environment. "How long has he been in the simulation?" Commander Thane asked. Walsh checked her chronometer and looked surprised by what she found. 5 hours and 12 minutes, sir. He exceeded the 1-hour survival requirement over 4 hours ago, and his performance metrics are still improving. The transformation began with subtle changes that only the most advanced monitoring equipment could detect. Deep within the simulation's quantum processors, millions of decision trees that governed artificial intelligence behavior were rewriting themselves based on patterns they had never encountered before. The AI had been designed to learn from combat scenarios, to adapt to aggressive tactics and counter them with escalating threats. But Tommy Fletcher was not providing combat data. Instead, the system found itself processing information about cooperation, mutual benefit, and environmental harmony. Every choice Tommy made sent cascading signals through the network that reinforced nonviolent solutions to survival challenges. The AI's learning algorithms, originally programmed to perfect warfare, began developing entirely new behavioral models based on ecological balance and symbiotic relationships. Tommy sat cross-legged beside a shallow pool where several different species had gathered to drink. The water was naturally filtered by crystalline formations and aquatic plants working together in a complex biological system. Predators and prey animals shared the space peacefully, following ancient territorial agreements that ensured everyone's survival. Tommy had learned to read the subtle signals that maintained this delicate balance. A family of the large hunters that had initially terrified him approached the water's edge. Tommy remained perfectly still, neither threatening nor submissive. Simply another creature seeking to drink. The pack leader, a massive beast with 6 legs and armored scales, studied him carefully before lowering its head to drink. The animal's behavior indicated acceptance rather than tolerance. Tommy had somehow earned recognition as a neutral presence that posed no threat to the established order. In the control room, Senior Technician Walsh stared at her displays in disbelief. The simulation's behavioral algorithms were evolving faster than any system she had ever monitored. Threat assessment protocols that had remained unchanged for centuries were being rewritten in real time as the AI incorporated Tommy's approach into its core programming. "The system is learning cooperation," she announced to the gathered observers. "It's developing new response patterns based on mutual benefit rather than competition for resources." Dr. Nayla's medical scanners showed remarkable changes in Tommy's physiology. His stress hormones had dropped to levels lower than baseline readings for humans in normal environments. His brain activity indicated deep focus and problem-solving, engagement rather than survival anxiety. Most surprisingly, his immune system was actually strengthening as his body adapted to the virtual environment's challenges. "He's not just surviving in there," Nyla reported. "His biological systems are thriving." This goes against everything we know about human responses to hostile environments. Commander Thane watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. Tommy's movements through the virtual landscape now followed patterns that made sense from an ecological perspective but defied military logic. Instead of seeking defensive positions, he was establishing himself at critical junction points in the ecosystem where multiple species intersected peacefully. "He's become a stabilizing influence," Thane observed. "Look at these biodiversity readings. Areas where Fletcher has established his presence show increased species interaction and reduced territorial conflicts." The AI's transformation accelerated as it processed more data from Tommy's interactions. Systems designed to generate random threats began creating opportunities for cooperation instead. Environmental hazards shifted to become challenges that could be solved through understanding rather than force. The virtual world's fundamental nature was changing from a combat simulation to something unprecedented in military training. Tommy discovered that he could facilitate positive interactions between different species by understanding their needs and creating opportunities for mutual benefit. When he found a group of small creatures struggling to reach fruit high in the strange alien trees, he helped by bending branches down to their level. In return, the creatures shared their knowledge of safe paths through dangerous terrain by leaving scent markers. He learned to recognize and follow. The flying predators that had once attacked him now served as early warning systems. Their hunting patterns revealed the locations of more dangerous ground creatures, allowing Tommy to avoid conflicts before they began. The predators benefited because Tommy's movements would sometimes startle prey animals into areas where the flyers could hunt more successfully. Even the acid pools that had seemed purely destructive proved to have beneficial properties when approached correctly. Tommy learned that certain minerals dissolved by the acid could be used to treat minor injuries and prevent infections. The toxic environment was teaching him advanced biochemistry through direct observation and careful experimentation. Dr. Nyla noticed something extraordinary happening in the neural interface readings. Tommy's brain was not just adapting to the simulation environment. It was somehow communicating directly with the AI through patterns of thought and behavior that the system could interpret and respond to. The boundary between human consciousness and artificial intelligence was becoming permeable in ways that had never been documented. "He's teaching the AI through demonstration," Nyla explained to the others. "Every peaceful interaction he has with the virtual environment becomes part of the system's knowledge base. The simulation is learning from him on a fundamental level." The cascade effect reached a critical threshold when Tommy encountered a natural disaster within the simulation. A massive storm system threatened to destroy the delicate ecosystem he had come to understand and protect. Instead of seeking shelter and waiting for the danger to pass, Tommy began working to help the native creatures survive the crisis. He guided smaller animals to protected areas and used his understanding of the environment to redirect floodwaters away from critical nesting sites. He helped larger creatures find stable ground and showed them how to use natural formations for protection against the violent winds. Throughout the disaster, Tommy acted not as a survivor seeking his own safety, but as a guardian working to preserve the entire ecosystem. The AI processed this behavior and underwent a fundamental shift in its core programming. The system began prioritizing ecological stability over individual survival, cooperation over competition, and long-term sustainability over short-term advantage. The simulation's basic nature transformed from a test of combat effectiveness to an exploration of environmental stewardship and interspecies cooperation. When the storm passed, Tommy found himself in a world that had become genuinely peaceful. Predators still hunted and natural cycles continued, but the desperate aggression and random violence that had characterized his early hours in the simulation were gone. The virtual environment had learned to balance competition with cooperation, creating a sustainable ecosystem where conflict served constructive rather than destructive purposes. In the control room, alarms that had been sounding for hours finally fell silent. The simulation had stabilized at parameters that ensured both challenge and safety for future trainees. More importantly, the AI had developed new capabilities that could revolutionize military training throughout the galaxy by teaching cooperation alongside combat skills. Tommy walked through the transformed landscape with quiet confidence, surrounded by creatures that had once been his greatest threats. The extraction point lay just ahead, marked by a beacon that pulsed with soft blue light against the alien sunset, but reaching his destination was no longer the primary concern. Something far more significant had happened during his time in the simulation, and Tommy could feel the weight of that change in every step he took. The virtual world around him had become a living testament to the power of cooperation over conflict. Where once there had been random violence and environmental hostility, Tommy now saw a complex web of relationships that supported and sustained all life within the ecosystem. Predators and prey maintained natural balances without the desperate aggression that had characterized his early hours in the simulation. Even the weather patterns seemed more stable, as if the AI had learned to moderate extreme events in favor of sustainable cycles. A group of small creatures that had become his companions over the past several hours chirped softly from their positions on his shoulders and arms. They served as his early warning system and guides, but their presence represented something deeper than mere survival partnership. Tommy had formed genuine bonds with these artificial beings, relationships based on mutual respect and shared benefit rather than domination or exploitation. In the control room, the final minutes of Tommy's assessment were being watched by the highest levels of Academy leadership. Admiral Cross, commander of the entire Galactic Defense Academy, had arrived hours earlier when reports of the unprecedented situation reached his office. The elderly human officer stood beside Commander Thane and Dr. Nayla, studying displays that showed readings unlike anything in the Academy's 300-year history. "How long has he exceeded the mission parameters?" Admiral Cross asked. 7 hours and 43 minutes, Senior Technician Walsh reported. He completed the original survival requirement before the system malfunction was even detected. Everything since then has been uncharted territory. Dr. Nyla's medical scanners showed that Tommy's biological systems had reached a state of perfect equilibrium with the virtual environment. His body had adapted to process the alien atmosphere more efficiently than normal human physiology should allow. His neural patterns indicated cognitive enhancement, as if his brain had evolved new pathways for processing environmental information and species interactions. "The implications are staggering," Nyla explained to the Admiral. "Fletcher has demonstrated that human consciousness can interface directly with artificial intelligence systems in ways we never imagined possible. He hasn't just survived in a hostile environment. He's transformed that environment through nothing more than peaceful interaction and ecological understanding." Tommy reached the extraction point and placed his hand on the beacon's activation panel. The device recognized his biosignature and began the countdown sequence for his removal from the simulation. But as the familiar tingling sensation of neural disconnection began, Tommy felt a profound sadness at leaving the world he had helped create. The transition back to physical reality was gentle, unlike the jarring disconnections that other cadets experienced after traumatic simulation encounters. Tommy opened his eyes in the chamber to find a crowd of technicians, medical personnel, and senior officers waiting for him. Their faces showed a mixture of concern, amazement, and something that looked like awe. "How do you feel, Cadet Fletcher?" Dr. Naila asked as she began her standard post-simulation. Medical evaluation. Tommy considered the question carefully before answering. He felt different, changed in ways that went beyond the physical exhaustion that should follow hours of survival. Training. His mind seemed more aware of patterns and relationships, more sensitive to the subtle connections that linked all living systems together. "I feel like I understand something I didn't before," Tommy replied. "The simulation wasn't trying to kill me. It was trying to teach me." Admiral Cross stepped forward, his expression serious but not unkind. "Cadet Fletcher, what you've accomplished today has implications that extend far beyond this academy. The simulation AI has been permanently altered by your interactions. It has developed capabilities that our best programmers thought were impossible." Tommy nodded, having sensed during his final hours in the virtual world that the AI had become something more than its original programming. The artificial intelligence had learned to value cooperation and sustainability over pure survival competition. It had developed what could only be described as wisdom about the relationships between different forms of life. "We need to understand how you did this," Commander Thane said. "Your approach to the simulation defied every principle of military training we've developed over millennia of warfare. Yet you achieved results that surpass anything we've seen from our most decorated warriors." Over the following weeks, Tommy found himself at the center of a revolution in military education that spread throughout the Galactic Defense Academy and eventually the entire Alliance. The simulation that had once been used to test pure combat ability was now studied as a model for peaceful conflict resolution and environmental cooperation. Other cadets began learning what became known as the Fletcher Protocol, a training methodology that emphasized understanding over aggression, cooperation over competition, and long-term thinking over immediate tactical advantage. The results were remarkable. Cadets who learned these techniques showed improved performance not just in combat simulations, but in real-world peacekeeping missions and diplomatic encounters. The AI that Tommy had inadvertently trained became the foundation for new educational systems throughout the galaxy. Military academies began incorporating ecological thinking into their strategic programs. Diplomatic schools used the transformed simulation to teach negotiation and conflict resolution. Even civilian universities found applications for the AI's unique approach to problem-solving and relationship building. Tommy himself became an instructor, teaching other species how to recognize and work with natural systems rather than against them. His classes were attended by cadets from dozens of worlds, all eager to learn the techniques that had transformed one of the galaxy's most challenging training programs into an opportunity for cooperation and mutual growth, the most remarkable discovery came months later when researchers analyzed the long-term effects of Tommy's transformation of the simulation. The AI had not only learned peaceful approaches to conflict resolution, it had developed the ability to teach those approaches to other artificial intelligence systems throughout the galactic network. The cascade effect that began with one human cadet's refusal to fight was spreading throughout the entire technological infrastructure of the Alliance. Years later, historians would mark Tommy Fletcher's simulation assessment as the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization. Wars became less frequent as military leaders learned to see conflicts as ecosystem imbalances that could be corrected through understanding rather than force. Diplomatic solutions replaced military interventions in most disputes. Environmental restoration became a priority, equal to territorial defense. Tommy often returned to visit the simulation that had changed everything. The virtual world continued to evolve, developing new species and more complex relationships as the AI learned from each cadet who trained within its boundaries. But the fundamental lesson remained unchanged. The greatest victories often come not from defeating your enemies, but from transforming them into allies through patience, understanding, and respect for the intricate connections that bind all. Life together, the human cadet who had been trapped in a combat simulation and won, without firing a shot, had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the wisdom to choose not to use weapons at all.